I'm gonna be filming this entire video on the Canon PowerShot V1. There was an older gentleman online where he said he was returning this camera because of the auto ISO performance. So when you take the camera out and just start shooting with it, the exposure would be off. So I'm shooting in auto ISO. We're gonna see how it performs. What prompted me to make this video where all of the Lumix S1II videos that I've watched, there has been a significant amount of chatter, discussions in the camera community about this camera, and specifically comparison to the Fx3, this older Sony camera. And you know, as someone that has mainly shot Sony, I have the Fx30, which is this has been my studio camera, still one of my favorite cameras. If right now, I think this is my favorite, this is the camera that I would recommend even over the ZV-E1 for content creation, although it's overkill for most people. I have spent the last couple of months with Lumix, and I have learned so much about their system, and they have so many of the features that I wish Sony cameras had. You know, what I'm gonna do is for the next month or so, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna switch strictly to Lumix cameras. There are a lot of things that these cameras can actually do to benefit me in my workflow. But there are some things that I'm worried about with some of the flaws that I've discovered with the system. So first, let me tell you about the Fx30 and what I love about this camera so much. So for me, the Fx30 is my all-in-one solution. It does almost everything I need at a very high level. See, I purchased this camera with the money that I received from the Fx3 that I got stolen, and I don't miss it at all, because with the Fx30, I get top tier image quality. The camera doesn't overheat. I get high quality XLR audio built right in. So the moment I take out the SD card, I have great audio. I have the option of baking in LUT, which makes my workflow much faster and easier. A couple other things that I really love about the Fx30 are the lens selection. Sony has a ton of APS-C lenses as well as third-party lenses that pair up really well with a camera like this, including the 15-1.4. Sigma has the 10 and 18. Ton of different options for this camera. This camera is also under $2,000. So it's just a really hard camera to beat nowadays. The only issue that I've had with this camera are firmware updates. That's it. But once I got over that, there really is no other issue. Or actually, the only other issue that I have with the Fx30, and it's not necessarily something wrong with the camera, it's just that, so the Fx30 for me serves it's my talking head camera. And that's the only purpose that it serves, because when I do all of my other stuff in the studio where I'm recording, even filming myself or doing product B-roll, I like having an electronic viewfinder. And for me, that's where the A7S III comes in. Till this day, the A7S III is still my most used camera because it has that electronic viewfinder. When I'm using the slider, and when I'm in manual focus, I like using the electronic viewfinder to see if everything's in focus. Also for my exposure. And for me, that's why the Fx30 just sits in the teleprompter setup. It doesn't have any other use. Now with the Lumix system, I would say the first big advantage for me so far that I've noticed is that this camera kind of gives me the best of both worlds, right? It gives me the cinema features of an Fx30, Fx3, and the EVF and form factor of the A7S III, all in one body. This camera has a built-in fan. Like I said, electronic viewfinder. It can shoot up to 4K 120, albeit there are limitations to it, which I'll talk about later. But in terms of form factor, this actually makes sense for someone like me. I'd rather have this with all the cinema features, and that kind of does it for me. Another big advantage that I get from using the S1II or the S1R2 is that if you purchase the $300 XLR module, you can now get 32-bit flow audio coming straight out of this camera. Now your question might be, well, why do you even need 32-bit flow? I mean, that's a valid question. But for my studio setup here, I don't need 32-bit flow. The XLR audio coming out of the Fx30 with the XLR handle, or even the K3M module, there's plenty of dynamic range for a setup here that I already have fine-tuned for this specific spot. But like what I did for my S1R2 launch video, or the S1II video, after all the work that I put in, the audio was still trash. And I did everything to try to make sure all the levels were correct and everything. And still, my audio was not great. And I think that having 32-bit float is going to allow me to just worry about one less thing when I am working with audio and working with rigging up these setups. And so for me, that's a really nice thing to have. It's not a necessity, but it's a nice thing to have. Actually, I think right now is a great time to demonstrate and compare the audio of the XLR coming out of the Sony versus the one in the Lumix by telling you about my sponsor, Evoto. Okay, got the Sony on this side, the Lumix over here. Mics are about the same distance away from my mouth. Okay, so now let me tell you about today's sponsor, Evoto, the absolute GOAT of AI portrait editing. With Evoto, I'm able to quickly remove blemishes, freckles, acne. You can use dodge and burn to retouch the skin, which is a professional technique that used to be a tedious process to do this manually. You can now do it with a simple slider so that you can smoothen the skin without losing texture. Dark under eyes is always an issue when working with faces, and this software does an amazing job with that, along with removing under eye bags and even smile lines. You can edit the teeth, brighten the eyes, and even remove the red veins, which is always a pain trying to do that manually. You can use the AI color match, where you can reference any image, and then you can apply those tones to a new photo. You can shoot tethered directly into Evoto, which honestly, it changes everything for me, because when I'm photographing someone, if it's a client, model, it don't matter. Allowing them to see themselves already fully edited versus raw 40 megapixel, 50 megapixel straight out of camera, it's not good for your health, okay? For hair editing, you can remove hair gaps, remove stray hairs with a simple slider, and you know what? It does an incredible job at it. You can quickly remove the glare from someone's glasses. It does a hell of a job with de-wrinkling clothing. You can quickly remove distractions from the background and completely change out the background if you want. One of the coolest things is that you're able to create your own preset with all the changes you made, and then quickly apply those changes to all of your other images. There is so much more that you can do with this software. I just scratched the surface here. Evoto is a free download. You can pay as you go, and the exclusive link that can get you 5 credits for free is down in the description box. Another big advantage of using Lumix over my Sony system are all of the built-in anamorphic features. See, I'm not gonna lie, lately I've been really falling in love with the anamorphic look, and it's just kind of rejuvenated some creativity in my work, and I'm embracing it full force. All right, thanks to Cam and the guys for really, getting me into this stuff. See, on the FX30 built in, all you really get is a D-Squeeze 1.3 and 2.0, and that's really all you got. So it's very, very limited. You would have to attach an external monitor, whereas in the Lumix system, you have everything you need. So you have different kinds. So you have 1.30, 1.35, 1.8, 2.0. Then you also have image stabilization specifically for anamorphic lenses, which Sony doesn't have, even if you attach an external monitor. And on top of that, combining the open gate recording with anamorphic lenses, you are making better use of the resolution, because you are squeezing it on 16:9. You are losing a little bit, which is not a big deal, to be honest, but it's just another reason why this is the system to go to if you really, really, really want to get into anamorphics and you don't want to use a tripod or any kind of external monitor. So that right there alone is tempting to me. I'm already going to buy on the website the Mantis set I'm going to buy it in the PL mount so I could adapt it to Lumix, because I'm having way too much fun with anamorphic, and Sony just doesn't offer that right now. Now, this one is very niche to me. It's called Focus Transition. You can choose from a couple different keyframes in camera, and in combination with my slider, let's just say this is a new product. Now with Lumix, I can set 2 keyframes from the beginning and the end. Those are my keyframes, and now I just time it properly, and the product will be in focus the entire time. Now this one is definitely more of a luxury, but this camera has open gate recording, 3:2 aspect ratio. Some people will absolutely swear by it, and then other people will claim that it's a gimmick. I can only speak for myself, and for me, it's a nice to have. For my main talking head setup, when I'm cropping for Instagram, it does give me a little bit more room. And another one, if I'm putting a camera on a tripod here, filming myself, go to work, why not use OpenGate and give myself a little bit more flexibility? So it's a nice to have. Now, whether or not it's something that you could see yourself using or benefiting from, the fact that no other full frame mirrorless system has it, you gotta give Lumix their flowers on that one. There are just a lot of other little things that no one really talks about when it comes to the usability of Lumix. And I could spend a whole 30 minutes talking about all these things. But for example, I'm using the A7S III and I got the screen out to the side. I want to quickly check my exposure or my focus. I can't use the EVF when it's flipped out to the side. With Lumix, not only does the four-way screen pop all the way out so that it doesn't block the ports, but if I have the screen out to the side, I can still use the EVF, which is nice. Another example, I mean, it has built-in time lapse where you can actually create the movie all inside the camera. Chicago had a historic dust storm like a week or two ago. I filmed the time lapse, created the video in camera using a Lumix Lab app. I sent it to my mom and I got an instant reaction. There was also a pretty big thunderstorm last week. And to get a lightning photo, I mean, I put this camera into pre-burst shooting. I got 70 FPS in photo. Once I saw the lightning, I took the photo and I had like 5 lightning photos. I mean, it's never been so easy. None of my Sony cameras have pre-burst because I don't own the A1II or the A9 III. I know these features aren't exclusive to Lumix, but having a single camera body that can do all of that, that's the point I'm trying to make. Okay, so I'm in the car editing this video, waiting for my daughter to get out of volleyball practice. And fun fact, I just got flicked off for the first time. Some Tesla hater stuck his middle finger out there, really nice and proud. He looked like he runs a Discord chat, hasn't touched grass in a while. But something I forgot to mention was the fact that the S1II can match the Sony A7S III's frame rate. So I can shoot 4K 120, which is a big plus for me. I shoot all of my product stuff at 4K 120, but also the low light performance. So the dual native ISO, the high one is 5,000 on the S1II. But when I'm shooting at around 12,800, the footage actually looks pretty freaking clean. I have a couple sample clips I'll put up on here, but it looked good. So if I ever really need to stop down the lens so that I can deepen the depth of field, I can go up to those ISOs like the A7S III and not have to worry about a ton of noise. Now, with that said, there are some things that I don't like about the Lumix system. And the first one is that I feel there are just too many freaking options, okay? Like, people complain about the Sony Mini system, but let me tell you, look, let's go to record quality here okay? Look at all of the different pages and options. They got 12 different pages here of options, which could be great. It could be a great thing for you. You have different aspect ratios, and I mean, it just goes on and on. There's even a display filtering button if you want to just kind of filter out what you're looking for, which is nice. But a workaround to that is you can customize these buttons here by long pressing. And here I have 4 of the most used frame rates that I'm going to use. So that's kind of a workaround. That's cool. But another thing is that there's a lot of inconsistency with using this camera, in the sense that, like, if I'm on the FX30, for example, and I want to shoot 4K 120, right? I'm in 4K 120 right now. I can go into the menu system and see, look, I still have subject detection. Everything still works for the most part. With Lumix, there's a lot of little nuances where if I go to 4K 120, for example, I lose out on subject detection. And if I go to a different mode, then all of a sudden I don't have this and I don't have that. And one of the nice things about this camera is that, you know, you do have dynamic range expansion. You have this ability to get more dynamic range, but then, you know, you can't use it for anything over 30 frames per second from what I've seen. So it takes time to get used to the Lumix system and learning the quirks and learning some of the things that you're not able to access when you start to change aspect ratios and change frame rates. There's definitely a learning curve there. Another thing I'm not a big fan of is the battery life of these cameras. Both the S1II and the S1R2, battery life is not great. To be fair, most of the time I do have Bluetooth on, so that drains it even more. But in my opinion, this is it has worse battery life than even the Canons, which are not great in that area either. I did buy a dummy battery for the S1II here that I'm not gonna have to worry about that so much, and it has the built-in fan, so I hopefully don't have to worry about overheating. Now, one of the things that I'm mostly concerned about is the touch tracking on this camera. One of the bigger flaws, I didn't even mention this in my S1II video until I started to start using this for B-roll, and I realized, wait, the touch tracking is not consistent at all. I use touch tracking on the A7S III when I'm doing side-to-side pans on the slider, and this camera struggles. Okay, so this is what I'm talking about with the tracking. So I'm gonna tap the mode dial on the camera, on the A7 IV there. Okay, so now it's got it. See the little yellow box? Okay, now it's just kind of like floating, not doing anything. And I have the sensitivity to locked on. So it shouldn't be bouncing around everywhere. So here, look, okay. See, it just kind of floats around, doesn't do anything. See, it should be like that. It should be tracking it like that. And it's doing a pretty good job now. This is hard for any camera to do, to be honest, but this one is the worst that I've used out of the other cameras in terms of touch tracking. Okay, so now this is with the Sony. I'm gonna record and I'm gonna tap the mode dial right there. And you see it does a much better job of staying on that mode dial. I also have the sensitivity set to locked on. And you see, it'll do multiple passes and it'll stay there. See, all cameras struggle with this, with products, and I've tested this before. But this is how I would expect touch tracking to work. And so here, like, it did get lost. See, it's not perfect. I think, it's kind of on the verge of missing. Okay. So I guess the big question is, in actual use case, will the benefits that I get from Lumix outweigh the things that I lose out on the Sony system? Do these advantages translate to the real world? That is what I'm gonna follow up on in a month or two. I think I can speak for a lot of the Sony users out there. I think the Sony upgrading strategy and the way they drip feed certain features, it's just gotten kind of old at this point, you know? Now, especially when a sub like $1,000, $2,000 camera gets a feature that my $6,000 camera doesn't have and will probably never receive in a future firmware update. I feel like I always have to upgrade my camera just to access this specific feature or this specific feature. When in contrast, you got a Lumix camera here that has everything in one body. And that's almost like one of the negative parts of using the Lumix system, is that there are so many features that it's kind of overwhelming, and I think that it is more than what most people need for their workflow, right? And the problem with that is that if you don't need a lot of these features, well, your menu system is much deeper now. You're gonna have way more pages, you're gonna have way more clutter there, so it's gonna take more time to find different things unless you set your camera up a certain way, which again, there's always a workaround here. But there is a simplicity about the Sony system and a consistency that is nice. But at the same time, okay, I say that is kind of annoying, but at the same time, let's look at some of the rumor site. The rumor site right now shows an Fx2. And this kind of goes along with my frustration with Sony is they got an FX, I mean, everything so far, the outside is exactly what I've been wanting. I want an FX body. I love the camera body, but with an EVF option, oh my God, we got an EVF option. That'd be amazing. 32-bit float, that would also be amazing. But, you know, I wonder how much that handle is actually gonna cost though, because these handles are usually priced pretty high, at least the K3M is. But everything looks good, okay? But you're gonna put an A7 IV sensor in here. Now, if that is true, that is disappointing, because although that sensor gives you some pretty good 4K video because it's downsampled 4K, it does not perform really well with rolling shutter, which is something that I'm not necessarily concerned about because this is gonna be like a studio camera. But the problem here is the 4K 60 max frame rate, and also it's gonna turn into APS-C. So again, I'm gonna have the same issue where now I'm gonna have a camera that, you know, can do almost everything, but now I can't put it on my slider and shoot product stuff with it because of the 4K 60 limitation. It's gonna have a crop. I like shooting in 4K 120. It would have been nice to have even the same sensor, something similar to this. I don't know, man. It's tough, and I know that this is a tier down, but if anything, they should have just saved this for the Fx2 too. Give us this in just one body. No more tiers of cameras where we feel like we have to upgrade to get this little bit. It's kind of frustrating, man. I'm done.